Joey. The knock at the door of the hotel room had my head snapping up, and I climbed to my feet, answering the door. Jake stood on the other side. His gaze lifted to mine, and he smiled. "Joey?" He stepped forward, wrapping his arms around me, and we stepped back into the hotel room as Jake kicked the door closed behind him. I should have felt joy at seeing Jake, of feeling his embrace, but something didn't sit right in my stomach, and I didn't hug him back. "I've missed you." He stepped back, his hands on my shoulders, and I looked up at him. Jake's brows furrowed, and he stared down at me. "Are you okay?" I looked up at Jake and smiled. "Yeah, just tired. I only flew in last night." Turning, I went back to the sofa and curled up on the end of it and looked back to my best friend. My gaze raked up and down him, and for the first time since we'd become friends, I failed to see why I had been so attracted to him. He looked like a generic Asian man. There was nothing remarkable about his features or his stature, the way he held himself, and if I didn't know him personally, I wouldn't have been able to pick him out in a crowd to save my life. He was nothing like his brother, who stood out in every way. "Where were you?" Jake asked, coming to sit on the other sofa. "I went to your apartment after we got back from Hawaii, but you'd left. I tried to call your dad, but I couldn't get through to him." "Yeah, that one was on me. I'd called Dad after the wedding when I told him I was leaving and asked him not to answer the phone if Jake tried to call. Obviously, he'd done just that, and I reminded myself to thank him when I next spoke to him. I decided to go traveling for a while. I did say that when we last spoke." The mention of that call had Jake's mouth turning down in a frown, and it was a few seconds before he spoke. "So, where did you go? Was he fishing for information? Had he figured out where I was?" I hesitated for a little bit before I answered his question. "All over the place. I've been working at random hospitals." It wasn't a complete lie. I had been in Chicago and then in New York. "Cool." Jake pushed his hand through his hair, and I frowned at his left hand. The ring was missing. I tilted my head to the side. "Where's your wedding ring?" Jake's hand dropped, and he looked down at it, color racing along his cheeks. He sighed and leaned back on the sofa. "Phoebe and I are taking a break." "A break? You've only been married for just shy of 3 months, Jake." "Yeah, I know, but we had an argument and she kicked me out." I stared at Jake, wondering if he was joking or not. When he didn't say anything else, I let out a huge breath. "Wow. Is that all you have to say?" There was an underlying angry tone to Jake's voice, and red flags started to pop up in front of my eyes. After being with someone like Alex for the last 2 months, Jake's attitude was everything you should avoid. "My wife kicked me out, and my best friend just says, 'Wow?'" I blinked. So now, when he was not with her, I was suddenly his best friend again? Nope, I was not going to be falling into this trap again. I had already decided this morning, while waiting for him to turn up, that I would not just fall back into the old ways with him. I had to be more in control, and the one that had taught me to do that was Alex. If Jake needed my help genuinely, I would help him. But otherwise, I was not going to be his puppet anymore. I'd done that far too long and had lost myself. "What am I supposed to say, Jake? I did try and warn you about a dozen times before you married her. She was no good, but you didn't listen to me because you were too interested in getting your rocks off." It was Jake's turn to blink, and I watched as the shock of my words sank in, and then the shock was replaced with anger. "Oh, wow. I always thought you had my back, Jolene, but now I know you never did." It took me a few seconds to register the fact he had just played victim. "Me have your back?" I threw back my head and laughed until I cried, tears rolling down my cheeks. "I did have your back, Jake, for over 13 years. I was there to help you with everything, and never once did I get a thank you or any kind of appreciation from you." I sat forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and Jake's gaze shifted to the opening of my blouse, and something in him changed. I'd seen that look before, when I was 12. I blinked and sat up, and his gaze slowly lifted to mine again, and for the first time in the 13 years I had trusted Jake, I suddenly didn't. I wanted him to leave. Now. But then, Alex's words slammed into my brain again, and I licked my lips. "What happened to your nose when we were 12? Jake's eyebrows furrowed and confusion flitted across his face. "Huh? What happened to your nose? You told me you broke it, playing basketball." Don't lie to me. Everyone knew when I lied, because usually the embarrassment of the deed showed on my face. Jake, though, could lie like a pro, but I had gotten good at being able to detect when he did. Tell me what happened, or leave. Jake's lips thinned, and he dropped his gaze to the floor. It took him a few moments, but he answered. Alexander broke it. My stomach sank to the floor and my shoulders slumped. I knew something had happened between them, but I didn't realize it had been violent. Why? Jake's jaw clenched again, and he closed his eyes. Because I lied to him. I told him I was going to go to the movies with you, when I was really at the park with some older guys from school, drinking and smoking, and you were at the mall. His voice faded as the memory came speeding back into my mind. Jake had told me he was busy, and I had gone to the mall by myself. I had been followed back to one of the parks by some older boys who had shown way too much interest in me. They'd promised me $20 if I just lifted my shirt and showed them my... I'd almost done it. I had closed my eyes and grabbed the hem of my shirt, but when I had opened my eyes, they had left. I had looked around to see where they'd gone, but I had been left alone. I'd cried all the way home, because I would have used that money to buy Jake a birthday present for the following weekend. Jake's voice brought me back to the present, and I stared at him as he lifted his head and looked at me. Alex was the reason those boys left you alone. He'd followed after seeing them trailing you from the mall and stood in the shadows behind you to make sure they didn't hurt you. After he scared them off, he followed you home to make sure you were safe, then found me and smashed my nose in for lying and not being there to look after you. My bottom lip trembled, and every good thing Jake and I ever had shattered into a million pieces. I stood, glaring down at him. I think you should leave. Jake stood and stepped forward, his hand coming out. Joey? I shook my head and stepped back. I said you need to leave. I turned and walked toward the door, ready to open it and push him out if I had to. Jake grabbed my arm and tried to get me to stop. Joey! I rounded on him, whipping my hand up and slapped Jake across the face. He let go of my arm, taking a step back before looking at me. A thin line of blood dribbled from his lip, and he lifted his hand, wiping it away, before he looked at me again. I'd never had Jake angry with me. That was something he'd managed to keep hidden. But the anger I saw in his gaze showed me he wasn't who I thought he had been. My sweet best friend, the kid I had met when I was only 10 years old, was gone and had been for some time. I had just been too blind with my adoration of him to see it. I stepped closer and glared up at him. You asked me where I've been for the last few months? Well, let me tell you. First, I went to Chicago because I couldn't stand being here after you married that bitch you now call wife. Then I have been happy for the last 2 months in New York. Jake stared at me. You've been talking with Alexander. That's why you asked about my nose. Talking? Pfft. I can tell you now, I scoffed. Talking didn't really happen. Remember when you called me on the Friday morning before the wedding to complain about me ditching your bitch of a wife on her hen's night? Well, I just crawled out of Alex's bed. I pulled the edge of my jeans and showed Jake the finger marks on my skin from where Alex had dug his fingers into my hip, while I had gotten off, rubbing on his thigh only 2 nights earlier. I'd noticed them this morning when I had gotten changed. Are you serious? You've been fucking him? There was disgust in Jake's tone, and I smirked. Oh, you have no idea. How does it feel to know your brother, the one who smashed your nose in, can't get enough of my body? That he treats me like a queen? Jake's jaw clenched. He's only doing that to get back at me. I dropped my hands and rolled my eyes. For fuck's sake, when will you understand not everything is about you? I turned and walked to the door, opening it and turned back to him. Now I want you to leave. It looked like Jake wasn't going to leave, and I was prepared to go down to the lobby and get security up here, if I had to. But in the end, he dropped his head and stepped forward and walked out the door. He turned back to me. He's going to break your heart, Joey. No, you did that. When you took Oliver's sister to prom, over me. When you kept looking past someone who would have given everything to you. When you married Phoebe. I watched the color drain from his face, and at any other time I would have comforted him, hoping he would have seen me. But I was done with Jacob Kazumi. There was no room for him in my life anymore. Alex has shown me what I am worth. My voice trailed off, as I realized the anger in Alex's gaze, as I had told him I was coming back to Jake, was really pain in me leaving. He had just steeled himself against the heartbreak. I lifted my head and looked at Jake. He loves me, and I love him. Jake opened his mouth to say something, and I shook my head. Don't bother. Nothing you say to me has an effect anymore. We're done. Don't call me or text me, otherwise next time it'll be me that breaks your nose. I slammed the door and stood staring at it, my heart hammering in my chest. I almost expected Jake to kick the door or smash it open to get back in, and maybe attack me. But when nothing happened after a few moments, I stepped forward and looked through the spy hole. The hallway was empty, and I sighed in relief. Placing my head against the door, I started to laugh. Why the fuck had it taken so long for me to stand up to him? It was because I hadn't been supported, as I had been by Alex. Alex. Turning, I raced back to the sofa and picked up my phone, dialing his number. It went to voicemail, and I frowned. Dialing again, I called his office. Again, it went to message, and I started to feel sick to my stomach. I scrolled through my contacts and found another number, dialing it. It picked up after the first ring. Jolene? Oliver? Is Alex okay? He's not picking up his phone, and the office is going to voicemail. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I wouldn't have been surprised if Alex's best friend hung up on me. No doubt he would have known I left to come back to Jake. He's alive, if that's what you're wondering. But okay? No, he's not okay, Jolene. I frowned and closed my eyes. Did you find out what happened 10 years ago? I nodded. Yes. Good. It's been killing Alex not being able to tell you. Oliver sounded relieved. Obviously he'd been holding it in too. Do you love him? My eyes opened and I nodded again, even though I knew the big man on the other end of the line couldn't see me. Yes. Then you need to get on the first plane back to New York and tell him. He'll be at the Jade Dragon from 7 tonight. I'll get a flight for you. Don't be late. I'll have a car pick you up when you arrive. The phone clicked and I blinked, staring at it. Picking myself up, I packed everything back into my case and left the room, heading down to the lobby. Checking out, incurring any fees I had to, I looked down at my phone as it pinged. You have an hour to get to the airport. I scrambled out of the hotel and took the first cab back to the airport. I was going back to New York to tell Alex I loved him. Maybe fighting one of the clan's quickest and strongest guys wasn't such a good idea. But I was so pissed and broken about Jolene leaving, I needed to get my anger out and into someone who could take it. I'd told Reggie not to go easy on me. I needed the beating. Just didn't think the fucker would have taken it literally. Now sitting in the private booth at the back of the Jade Dragon nightclub after the fight the night before, I just wanted to drown my sorrows and then go home to bed and sleep forever. How was I going to function now? Jolene had literally been the best thing that had ever happened to me. I'd become the clan's spinster, not married, no kids at 33, but then Rosie had come into my life and all the things I thought I would miss out on were finally within my grasp. Until my shit stain of a brother called her, and Jolene turned from the woman who had an insatiable lust for me to Joey, the shy little girl who wanted to make sure Jake was okay. Sighing, I picked up my glass of sake and lifted it to my lips as the curtain on the booth opened. Oliver stood in the gap, staring at me, and he frowned. Reggie told me he'd beat you, but god damn it, Alex. I shrugged, tossing back the glass of sake and picked up the bottle, pouring another measure. I did tell him to go for it. Plus, I feel better now. Did you get Yasu to check your face and make sure it's not broken? Oliver would be taking in the split cheekbone, swollen eye, and the bruising that littered my jawline. Yes, Dad. Oliver flipped me off before lifting his hand to the earpiece in his ear. He said something into the little microphone on his collar and looked at me, a smirk coming to his lips. I'll be back in a minute. Don't go anywhere. I rolled my eyes and watched as the curtain fell again, and I sat back against the cushions. I wasn't going anywhere until I had to be carried out of here by Oliver's bouncers for the second night in a row. Knocking back another glass of sake, I lifted my gaze as the curtains moved again. That didn't take. My voice froze in my throat as the curtain closed behind my new guest, and I heard Oliver from the other side. Clear out these other booths. No one comes near this one. My gaze raked up and down, those beautiful curves, the ones my hands had been roaming over the last couple months. The dress she wore hugged her torso, flaring at the hips, in my favorite shade, deep forest green. Her hair had been let loose, cascades of auburn curls falling over her creamy skin. "Hi," I blinked. "Hi?" Was that all she was going to say? Just hi? Her face flushed as I stared at her, and the pain and anger I'd had when she left evaporated. I could have been that guy, the telling her to fuck off, but seeing her again was like heaven. I tilted my head to the side and smirked, crooking a finger at her. "Come here." Joey smiled, stepping away from the curtain and sidestepping the table, coming over to the sofa. I thought she would stop in front of me, but she didn't. Joey straddled me, sinking down onto my lap, and I hardened immediately. I tilted my head back, looking up at her. Concern crossed her features for a moment as she took in my injuries before she licked her lips. "What do you need?" Oh, God. I needed everything. To marry her, I needed her to be pregnant with my children. I needed to flaunt our relationship in front of my brother, my family. But in the end, I just said 2 words. "Kiss me?" Joey smiled, her hand lifting, and she wrapped it gently around my throat, tipping my head back further and leaning in, her breath whispering across my lips. "Say please." My eyes closed as she ground her hips down onto my cock, making it jump. "Kiss me? Please." I'd savored Joey's lips over the last 3 months, tasted them, nibbled on them, kissed them until they were almost purple and bruised. But this time, when they touched mine, it was as if I'd never tasted them before. She kissed me softly, as if I would break, and it took all my strength to not wrap my arms around her and ravage her on the sofa. While I usually enjoyed rough and desperate, I was in ecstasy with the gentleness of her. Joey pulled away, running her thumb over my bottom lip, and I opened my eyes, looking up into her hazel ones. Her gaze shifted to my almost swollen shut eye, and she frowned. "What happened?" "I got into a fight." "With what?" Her fingers danced lightly over the split on my cheekbone. "A bear?" I chuckled, capturing her hand with mine and kissed her fingertips. "Reggie is more like a tiger? Was it unprovoked? I mean, did he just want to fight for nothing?" I shook my head. "No, it was provoked. I told him to beat the shit out of me." Joey's nose screwed up as she tried to comprehend what I had just said. "What, are you kidding?" "Nope." I kissed her palm before putting my hands on her hips and lifting her off me. I moved her to the sofa beside me and leaned forward, picking up the glass of sake and sculled it back. "I was so pissed when you left. I just needed an outlet. So I asked Oliver to set up a fight and told Reggie not to go easy on me." I put the glass on the table and looked at her. She was chewing on her bottom lip, her eyes watering, and I sighed. Leaning over, I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and pulled her into my embrace. "Hey, don't worry about it. It'll heal." Joey snuggled in against my ribs, her arm coming across my stomach. "I'm sorry." It took me a moment. "For what?" She looked up at me. "For leaving. You were right. About Jake." I sighed, pulling her back into my arms. "I'm sorry, doll. I didn't want you to find out like that." "It's fine," she mumbled against my chest. "I'm glad I did, because I found out something else too." My stomach contracted, and I held my breath. "I found out you've been protecting me since I was 12. God only knows what would have happened if you hadn't scared those boys away, and I just want to say thank you and—" I looked down at her and she lifted her head, staring up at me. I love you." My stomach flipped in a million directions as those words left her lips. "What?" A flush raced across Joey's cheeks, and she tried to look away. I gripped her chin and made her look at me. "Say it again, please." A smirk tugged at her lips, and she tilted her head back a little. "I love you, Alexander Kazumi." I closed my eyes, my heart racing. Again. "I love you." Joey moved, and I opened my eyes as she straddled me again, wrapping her arms around my neck, one of her hands lifting to curl around the back of my neck and into the base of my hair. "And I'd like to stay, if you still want me." My hands went to her ass, pushing under her skirt, palming her cheeks and her hips ground down onto my lap, making my cock throb. "Oh, doll, you don't know how much I want that." She smiled, leaning forward and bit gently at my bottom lip, tugging it gently before kissing me softly. "Then tell me." I lifted one of my hands, capturing the side of her face, and held her forehead against mine. "I love you, Jolene Brewster." The words, as they left my lips, seared into my heart, and I knew I would never be able to get rid of them. Joey was going to be the only woman I ever loved, the only woman I would ever share my bed with. I looked up at her. Dragging her head down to mine again, I kissed her, my tongue pushing into her mouth. Joey mewled against me, her hips grinding down onto my crotch, and the erection I already had became almost painful. How the fuck could I get so turned on by this woman that it hurt? I broke the kiss and looked up at Joey. Let's get out of here. I need to take you somewhere I can hear you screaming my name. 51. Joey. Soda had been pretty pissed with Alex, as he told him we didn't need him to drive us back to the house. But in the end, Alex had taken the keys to the sedan, and we'd left. About 3 blocks from the house, though, and with Alex's hand inching up my thigh and under my skirt, the flash of blue and red lights behind us had him swearing, "Fuck!" Alex pulled over to the side of the road and turned his head, looking at me. "Just cooperate, and we should be fine." I nodded and waited as an officer came up to Alex's window and tapped on it with a flashlight. Alex inhaled and wound down the window. "Good evening, officer. The reason we pulled you over tonight, do you realize you ran that stop sign?" I stared at Alex as he turned his head back to the sign. "Shit, sorry." Wow, I couldn't believe he had done that. The cop didn't say anything for a moment before speaking to Alex again. "Okay, license and registration, please." I stared as Alex nodded, pulling the registration from the pocket on the visor and handed it to him. "My license is in my wallet. Can I get it?" "Slowly," the cop replied, and Alex nodded, slowly reaching into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. He opened it and gave the cop the card. The officer leaned forward a little and shone the flashlight at me. "And you, miss?" "Oh, it's in my bag." "Slowly," the cop stated, and I nodded, reaching down and slowly bringing my bag to my lap. I opened the bag as wide as I could to show him there was nothing in there, and I grabbed out my purse, then handed him my license, although I wasn't sure why the hell he needed mine. I wasn't driving. "Wait here." The officer went back to his patrol car, and Alex turned his head to me. "Are you okay?" Yeah. Why would he want my license?" Alex sucked his tongue over his teeth. "Probably because you're in the car with me." I blinked. Have you been in trouble with the cops before?" Let's just say they've never been able to pin anything on me. Before I could ask Alex what he meant, the cop reappeared back at the window. "Ma'am, can I ask you to step out of the car?" "You too, sir." I looked at Alex, who blinked, and I nodded. Okay." We both climbed from the car and looked at each other over the roof before I turned back to the cop, my handbag clutched tightly in my hands. I'd never been in trouble with the law before, and I was terrified. "Is everything okay? We'd like you to come back to the station with us, please." I turned my head back to Alex, who was staring at me over the roof of the car, while the other cop put a pair of handcuffs on him. There was clearly anger in his gaze, and I knew he was having a hard time reining it in. "What, Alex?" "Ma'am, please, come with me." The cop gently took my arm and walked me back to the squad car, while Alex was detained at the side of our vehicle. "Sit, please." I slipped into the back of the cop's car, and he closed the door and went to the other cop, who nodded, and they both spoke to Alex. I watched as Alex nodded, then shook his head, before nodding again, and they patted him down. More lights and another squad car pulled up next to the one I was in, and another pair of officers stepped out and took over the interrogation of Alex, while the pair who had pulled me over came back to the car. "What's going on?" I asked as they climbed in and started the car. "Hey, what's going on?" "Ma'am, we're just going to take you back to the station for some questions," one of them said, and I turned in my seat, watching as the other pair of cops walked Alex to their car and pushed him into the back. Where are they taking him? Fuck, what the hell was going on? He's being detained for questioning. Why? They didn't answer, and I turned around and looked at them again. For the entire ride to the police station, they didn't say a word, and I was starting to freak out. What the fuck was happening? When we arrived, the cop let me out and motioned for me to follow them into the station. I started to walk toward the doors and turned my head as the other car turned up. I hesitated for a moment as the cops got Alex out of the car. He lifted his head as he started up the stairs, and his gaze met mine. He smiled and nodded at me as the cops led him past me and into the depths of the station. "Ma'am, please, the sooner we do this, the sooner you can go home." Through the station and into a room labeled Interrogation 1, I took a seat at the table and waited. "Ma'am, you're not under arrest. We would just like to ask you a couple of questions." I stared at the men. "Only if you answer one of mine first." They looked at each other, then to me, and nodded. "Is Alex under arrest?" "We can't discuss. Yes or no." One of the cops nudged the other and he sighed. "No, ma'am, Alexander Kazumi is not under arrest." "Then why was he handcuffed?" Again, the cops looked at each other, and then they answered. "Alexander is known to the police. We had to take precautions, for our safety, but we can assure you he is not under arrest. He will be let go once he has answered the questions asked of him." It was a generic answer, but for now it would do. "Okay, fine. What questions am I answering?" I knew I had to keep my mouth shut about anything to do with the Takata clan or my knowledge of the Yakuza. Let's just start with the basics. Are you Miss Jolene Brewster, born February 5th, 2000? I nodded, and the cop wrote it in the little notebook in front of him. Like the cameras in the corner of the room wouldn't have caught it. "We have had a request to do a welfare check on you." I blinked. "Welfare check? What? By whom?" The cop flipped back through his notebook a page. "At noon today, a Mr. Jacob Kazumi rang the Miami police saying he was worried for your welfare, that you had a fight with him, and when he came back to check on you, you were gone." I stared at the cop. "Are you— oh my God, you're serious?" "He stated he thought you might be in danger, that his older brother might have taken you, and that he has a violent past." Wow, I sat back in my chair and stared at the cops. Wow. My stomach dropped to my feet. This had nothing to do with the Yakuza. This was Jacob, trying to interfere with my life. Again, one of the cops leaned forward, pressing a button on his phone, and Jacob's voice floated from the speakers. "Hi, my name is Jacob Kazumi. I'm really worried about my girlfriend, Jolene Brewster. We had a fight, and I left her hotel room. When I went back to try and talk to her, she was gone." I stared at the phone. "I think maybe my brother might have come and gotten her. She isn't well. She's a little delusional, and my brother, Alexander Kazumi, is a dangerous man. Can someone please do a welfare check on her? I think they might be in New York." The recording stopped, and I looked at the cops, not believing what I had just heard. What the fuck was Jacob's problem? The phone disappeared back into a pocket, and the cop leaned forward. "Has Alexander Kazumi taken you against your will?" I blinked at the cops and then started to laugh. "Oh my God. No, I am here in New York because I want to be." I started to laugh again. "I work at the Mount Sinai Hospital in the trauma ward. Jacob and I have never, and I repeat, never been in a relationship. He was my best friend. He's married. He got married only 3 months ago." "And Alexander?" "Alexander Kazumi and I are together. We have been for the last 2 months." The cops fell silent, and I looked at them. "Jake is just pissed because when he married his wife, I moved on with my life, and he can't control me anymore, and the man I moved on with just happens to be his brother." I leaned back and folded my arms over my chest. "Jacob Kazumi is a narcissistic asshole, and I want nothing to do with him." The police looked at each other, then back to me again. "Are we done here? Because I am fine, and I am not under arrest." They nodded, and I stood, picking up my bag. I walked to the reception of the police station. "Would you like a lift to your home?" I shook my head and sat down in one of the chairs. "No, I will wait here until Alexander Kazumi, my boyfriend, is let out. Thank you." They shrugged and left me alone in the waiting area, and my anger with Jake seethed. And I could only imagine how pissed Alex was right now. 52 Alex. I'd been sitting in this interrogation room for what seemed like an eternity. The cops who had shown me in here had come to check on me once. My phone and wallet had been taken along with the keys to Soda's sedan. He was going to be pissed. What the fuck was going on? Why did they have Joey in the other room? Surely this was about me? The door finally opened again, and the pair of cops who had pulled us over walked in. They had a small brown paper bag, and it dropped onto the table. "Mr. Kazumi, you're not under arrest, but we have a few questions we need to go through with you." Did this have something to do with the break-ins? Because if it did, then I was going to kick Auto's ass. It was supposed to be dealt with in-house. "Sure. Okay, for the record. You are Mr. Alexander Kazumi, born December 1st, 1991? "Yes," I replied. I knew how to keep my answers short and sweet. I didn't want to give them anything they might be able to twist. And tonight, you were pulled over by ourselves. Yes. The reason we pulled you over was because you ran a stop sign. Yes. That didn't warrant them dragging us down to the station. We cooperated, and I would have paid whatever fine they wanted me to pay. The reason we brought you down to the precinct is because of your passenger. I stared at the cops in front of me. What? Miss Jolene Brewster, are you aware there has been a welfare check request made for her, or that her safety has come into question? Again, I stared, and one of the cops pulled out his phone, tapping at it a couple of times before he put it down, and my brother's voice slithered out of the phone. Hi, my name is Jacob Kazumi. I'm really worried about my girlfriend, Jolene Brewster. We had a fight and I left her hotel room. When I went back to try and talk to her, she was gone. I think maybe my brother might have come and gotten her. She isn't well. She's a little delusional, and my brother, Alex, is a dangerous man. Can someone please do a welfare check on her? They might be in New York. The cop picked up the phone and put it back in his pocket. I stared at the spot it had been. If I could have gotten to my brother right now, I would have wrapped my hands around his throat and throttled him, until there wasn't a single shred of left in his body. How fucking dare he pull this shit? And what was this about Joey being his girlfriend? What the fuck happened to his wife? Alex? I looked up at the cops. Huh? How long have you known Jolene? Since she was 10. She and my brother had been best friends since then. Had? Fuck, did I have to give them a play-by-play of what had happened over the last 3 months? Joey and Jake aren't really friends anymore, because he's a wanker. The cops looked at each other and then back to me. Did you bring Joey back to New York against her will? Had she said that? No. Jake had said that, or at least implied it. No, I did not bring Jolene back to New York against her will. She is a trauma nurse at Mount Sinai. She has been living with me for the last 2 months because we are seeing each other. One of the cops was writing this down, and I wanted to rip the notebook out of his hand and shove it up his... And how did this happen? What happened? Joey and I together? Let me see. I saw her, I liked her, I fucked her, and then she stayed. What can I tell you? The cops cleared their throats and looked away. Look, Jake and I have never been close. I broke his nose 10 years ago, and the little shit has had a grudge against me since then. He's obviously not happy his once best friend has gone and literally slept with the enemy. The cop closed his notebook and sat back. So this is nothing but a family spat. Looks like it. Sorry. I shrugged and the cop sighed, tipping back his head, and I leaned forward. Is Joey okay? Miss Brewster is waiting in the lobby. She refused a lift home, said she would wait for her boyfriend. My stomach flipped at the word boyfriend. Well, technically I was. Joey and I were dating. Whoa. Mr. Kazumi? I looked at the cops again. One of them was holding out the paper bag. Your things. We don't have any more questions. I took it, shaking out my phone, the sedan keys and wallet, and left the paper bag on the table as I stood. They showed me out of the room and walked me to the lobby where Joey was waiting, almost asleep on one of the chairs. I walked over to her, crouching down in front of her. Hey, doll. Her eyes fluttered open and she looked down at me. Alex? Her arms flung around my neck and I hugged her to me. Oh my God, I thought they were going to lock you up. It was... I sat back a little and shook my head. Not here. Let's go. We stood and I took her hand, walking out of the precinct and into the night. Pulling my phone out of my pocket, I dialed Soda, knowing he was going to be pissed beyond belief. It connected after a couple of rings. Mr. Kazumi? Soda, can you send a car to the local police precinct? Joey and I are there. Is everything okay? I hesitated, looking down at Joey, who was clinging to my arm, resting her head against my shoulder. Not really, but right now we need a lift back to the car. I will be right over with Auto. With Auto. Wonderful. Not only was Soda coming himself, but he'd bring Auto, who had taken a liking to Joey. They were both going to be pissed with what had happened, and no doubt I would get my ass chewed out by Soda the whole way back to the house. Alex? I asked, looking down at the woman by my side. What is going to happen now? I frowned as her question rattled around inside my head. There had to be clear boundaries set between Joey, Jake, and me. He was no longer part of my life. He was no longer part of her life. She'd come back to me. She was mine. What is going to happen now? Now I get to be the bad guy. 53, Joey. I couldn't believe that Jake had called the cops. What the fuck was wrong with him? He was the delusional one. Just because he couldn't control my life anymore, he was going to try and make it as difficult as possible. Soda had been very, very quiet while he drove us home, and I had felt like I was in trouble with my dad. I couldn't imagine what was going through Alex's head right now. He had told me that now he got to be the bad guy. He was Yakuza? How freaking bad could he get? The thought sat heavily in my stomach, and I looked over at him. Alex was typing on his phone, his eyebrows scrunched together, and the next thing I knew, the phone in his hands was ringing, and he swore. Fuck. Sighing, he pressed a button and held the phone to his ear. Hi, Ma. Oh, shit. No, I am not kidding. I want Jacob's number. My heart hammered in my chest, and I reached over, taking Alex's hand. He turned his head and smiled at me, while still talking to his mom. Ma, please. I don't ask you and Pa for anything. I just want Jake's number. He closed his eyes and hung his head. Yes, I am aware that he and Phoebe are not together at the moment. How did I know? Alex looked at me and grimaced. Was he about to tell his mom that we were together? Someone we both know told me. He turned his head away. Yes, Ma. Okay, thank you. I love you too. Alex hung up the phone and tipped back his head. For fuck's sake, that boy is a fucking idiot. What's happened? Sighing, Alex turned his head and looked at me as Soda rounded the corner of our street and pulled into the driveway. I'll tell you when we're inside. He handed me the keys to the house. I'll be in a minute. I nodded and climbed from the car, going into the house and flipped on a couple of the lights. It was so good to be back here. Even though it'd been just over 36 hours since I was here, it had felt like a lifetime. Wandering into the living room, I smiled at my case, parked in the middle of the room. Oliver must have had it delivered earlier. I waited in the living room for Alex, so he could tell me why he'd called Jake a fucking idiot. I mean, he was, but Alex had been pretty adamant that he needed to tell me in private. The door of the car closed, then the front door, and I turned as Alex walked into the living room and straight over to me. His hands gripped my face and he crushed his mouth against mine. My hands scrambled for his hips and I gripped him as he plundered my mouth with his. Alex pulled away, resting his forehead against mine. Tell me you love me. I pulled away slightly, looking up at him. I love you, Alex. His dark eyes opened. Again, please. Smiling, I lifted my arms, wrapping them around his neck, and his hands moved to my hips. I love you. Alex's eyes closed and a smile played on his lips. Great, as I repeated it, leaning in closer to him. I love you. My mouth found the soft, hot flesh of his neck, and I kissed his Adam's apple. His head tipped back as my hands moved down over his shoulders and stared to unbutton the black dress shirt he was wearing, kissing along the way. Pushing the shirt from his shoulders, I stepped back, looking at the absolutely gorgeous man who was mine. Strong muscles, lined with intricate tattoos. He stood in the middle of the living room, staring right back at me, and he smirked. What are you thinking about, doll? How lucky I am, I smiled. You? Alex chuckled and stepped closer, his hand catching my hip. That even after all the shit that went down tonight, you still owe me a scream. He took my hand and turned, leading me to the stairs, and he all but dragged me up them and into the bedroom. Once we'd stepped inside, he was at me again, kissing my neck as he walked us back toward the bed. His hands were on the buttons on the front of my dress, popping them open, and his mouth traveled down to the flesh of my chest. My hands threaded through his hair as he kissed the tops of my breasts, and his hands moved down over my hips and under my skirt. He palmed my ass, his mouth coming back up to my neck as he stepped closer. You make me so hot, it hurts. I giggled, and he pulled away, looking down at me. You think it's funny? I laughed harder this time, and he raised an eyebrow, a smirk coming to his lips as he warned, Joey? I'm sorry, Alex, but that shit is what corny romance novels have in them. Alex pulled me closer. Read a few, have we? I giggled and looked up at him. When you're not the ideal weight for most guys, you have to get some excitement from somewhere. Well, my beautiful Joey, Alex said, wrapping his arm around my waist and pulling me closer again. You are the perfect weight for me, and I love you. My stomach flipped and I looked up at him, my giggling dying off. Say it again. Alex chuckled and stepped us closer to the bed, tipping us back onto it, covering my body with his, and he looked down at me, with the most loving gaze I had ever seen on anyone, let alone aimed at me. "I love you, Jolene Brewster." He leaned forward, kissing me, and I moaned, arching my back, holding him to me. "Fuck," he moaned against my lips. "Nope. Scream. You still owe me a scream." Alex moved, and I lifted my head as he moved down my body, off the bed, and lifted my dress. His hands gripped the sides of my panties, and he pulled them off before grabbing my legs behind the knees and dragged me closer to the edge of the bed. "Alex," "Shh," he replied, and dropped to his knees, pushing my legs apart. Alex's arms hooked up over my hips, and he brought his mouth to my pussy. "Oh." My back arched as Alex started to work his mouth against my pussy, licking, suckling my clit and fingers. One of Alex's hands moved, and he slid 2 fingers into me, making my back arch further. "Alex." He pulled his mouth from my clit for a moment. "That's it, doll. Come on." Alex's mouth returned to my clit, and I couldn't hold it much longer. My hands scrambled for his hair, and I threaded my fingers through it, holding his face to my pussy as I came. "Oh, Alex." I collapsed back onto the bed, my head spinning. It wasn't as if he hadn't done it before, but eating me out like that... It seemed to be more intense now. Our feelings were out in the open. Alex slowly crawled back up my body, kissing as he went, and he nuzzled his mouth against my neck as he moved his hips and pushed his cock into me. Alex's arm slipped under the back of my neck, and with soft kisses to my neck, he slowly made love to me. This was different to normal. Slow, sensual, and loving. Nothing like the rough and almost animalistic sex we usually had. I held Alex to me, as he loved me, taking us both over the edge once more, and the night's events disappeared into the ether to be talked about at another time. 54, Alex. I stared at my phone and the number my mom had sent, Jake's number, along with the simple message, "Be gentle on him. He's hurting." He's hurting? That didn't give him the right to do what he had done. Tomorrow, I was going to have to march my ass into Yuka's office and explain to him why the head of his security was bundled into the back of a police car and taken down to the local precinct, and why I had been let go. I had to explain to my boss, the leader of a Yakuza clan, that I wasn't a snitch, and that my egotistical little snot of a brother had decided he wanted to try and control my girlfriend's life from almost 1,300 miles away. Sighing, I closed my phone and tossed it to the side and tipped my head back on the sofa. Joey was asleep in our bed after I had gotten my scream out of her, and my body responded with the memory of her tightening her fingers through my hair and holding my mouth to her sweet pussy as she came against my face. I smirked to myself as I realized that I literally could do that whenever I wanted now, because we were together. The thought of not having time with her, to love her, disappeared from my mind, because she was mine. I turned my head and looked at my phone and reached out, picking it up. After the shit he pulled tonight, Jake needed to know the boundaries were now set, and he better not cross them. Dialing the number Mom sent me, I held the phone to my ear and waited. I didn't give a shit that it was almost midnight. He wanted to inconvenience Joey and me. I would return the favor. The phone rang a few times, and just when I contemplated hanging up, it connected. "Hello? Jacob." The end of the line was silent, and I honestly thought my little brother would hang up on me. But I could hear his breathing, shallow and quick, as if he was worried about who was on the other end of the line. "So you'll sing your little heart out to the police and make false accusations, but not talk to your brother? Rude." "Alex," I could hear fear in Jake's voice, and if I wasn't so angry with the little shit, I might have stopped and thought about why he seemed so scared. "What? I'm worried about Joey, that's all." Worried? More like he wanted to control her. And she finally realized it and had fought back against it. "Like when you were 12? I heard my brother hiss. "You had no right to tell her about that." The fright was gone from his voice, replaced with a tinge of anger, and I chuckled. "I didn't. All I said to her was to ask what happened. You're the dumbass who told her. She should have never had to know. Now I've lost her." "Oh, for fuck's sake, cry me a fucking river, you little pussy." "You never deserved her, Jake. She was 100% yours, until you decided to stick your dick into other women. When you started seeing her as nothing more than an accessory, who would stick up for you and take the fall? My mind went back to a day when Joey and Jake were only 11. I was coming in the front door after my part-time job, in time to see Jake purposely push a piece of my grandmother's pottery off its pedestal because she had said he couldn't have a video game. He had blamed Joey, and she had not said a thing, instead promising to pay for it. Of course, I had said something to tell them it was Jake and I'd seen it, but by then I was nothing in my grandmother's eyes and she ruled the house with an iron fist, so if Jake told her it was Joey, it was Joey. You are nothing but a spoiled brat who had a good thing and destroyed any chance of finding someone who loves you for the self-centered shit stain you are. There was silence again on the end of the line, and I knew Jacob would be raining in his anger. He had a particularly short fuse, and at any moment he could lose his shit. Then it'd be game on. You can't speak to me like that. Are you fucking kidding me? You're almost 23. Grow up. What are you gonna do? Go running to Ma and Pa? Go for it. They still haven't forgiven me for smacking you when you were 12. What's a little more of their disappointment to add to the mix? And I really didn't care. My parents I would do anything for, but I would not capitulate to their need to baby Jacob. I'd lost the love of my family because of him. Are you going to call the cops again? For what this time? Joey told them she's safe, she's not missing, and she wants nothing to do with you. You've corrupted her with your... My brother was practically blubbering now. And even though I knew I should stop, I couldn't. All the anger I had had with my brother came flowing out of my mouth and down the line into his ear. With what? My dick? For sure. Do you know how loudly she screams my name as I am fucking her? How desperate she becomes when I eat her pussy? In fact, I still have the taste of her on my tongue right now, her scent all over my face. I heard something smash on the other end of the line, but I didn't stop. You definitely lost her, Jacob. And when she's my wife and the mother of my children, maybe you might finally see what you could have had. The end of the line clicked, and I chuckled, tossing my phone to the side and leaned back, closing my eyes, before I snapped them open and stared at the ceiling. Had I just told Jake I was going to marry Joey and have kids with her? What the fuck? Oh, Oliver would be on the floor in stitches of laughter right now if he had heard any of that conversation. Fuck, was I seriously considering that idea? My phone pinged next to me and I turned my head, picking it up and looked at the screen. There was a message there from Jacob. I frowned and opened it. You're going to regret ever coming back to Miami. I blinked and answered back with a laughing emoji. But it didn't send, and I tried a few times before I lifted the phone and tried to call. He wanted to threaten me. He better say it, not send me a damn text. The number you are trying to call is not in service. Please check the number and try again. I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the number. It was the same as the one I had called no more than a minute before. What the fuck? Alex? I looked up as Joey stepped into the living room, flipping on the light switch, bathing the room in a soft glow. She stared at me for a moment. Everything okay? Yeah, doll, I replied, putting my phone on the table. Just a work call. It's sorted now. Fuck, I hated lying to her, but I didn't want her to know I just chewed Jake a new asshole. Not with the emotional state she was still in from him. Oh, okay. I stood and crossed to her. Come on, let's go back to bed. We went upstairs and climbed back into bed, and as Joey snuggled down in my embrace, I had a sinking feeling deep in my gut. Shit was about to hit the fan, and all I could do was try and protect my woman from the fallout. 55, Joey. I sat in Yuka's reception, waiting for Alex. He had a meeting with the Yakuza boss, and then I was going to speak to Yuka about my decision. His offer had been rattling around in my head for the last week, and every time I thought I had come to a decision, I would go off in a different direction and would have to sit and think about it again. The elevator doors opened, and I lifted my gaze to the older woman who came shuffling into the office. Dressed in a traditional kimono, she moved with such graceful little steps toward the reception desk. She moved behind it, placing her wicker basket on the surface, before finally lifting her gaze, and she noticed me. Oh, dear me, I blinked. What had I done wrong? I lifted myself slightly and bowed to her. I am waiting for Alex. The woman peered at me as I stood straighter, and a smirk came to her wrinkled mouth. She opened it to say something. Pearl, behave. Her attention snapped to the side as Alex stepped out from the doors he had gone through only half an hour earlier. He looked at me, smiling. "Joey, Yuka will see you now." I stood, brushing my hands over my skirt, and walked over to Alex, acutely aware of the older Japanese woman watching me. Alex stepped to the side, holding out an arm. "Just down the corridor and through those doors. He's expecting you." I blinked at the doors looming at the end of the corridor and looked back to Alex. "You're not coming with me?" Alex shook his head. "No, doll. I will wait. This is between Yuka and yourself. I will wait out here and keep Pearl entertained." "Entertained?" I heard a huff and turned back to Pearl. "What will be entertaining is my sandal up your—" Alex pushed me forward a little and closed the door behind us with a chuckle. "She's a feisty one, so if I am not in one piece when you come back out, know that I love you and I am grateful for the time we spent together." I stared at him. "Are you kidding?" He raised an eyebrow and leaned forward, kissing me quickly, before he turned and stepped through the doors, closing them behind him, and all I heard was, "Pearl, my sweet, come have some tea." I stared at the door for a few more minutes before I sighed, turned and headed down the corridor and stopped in front of Yuka's office. Alex had run through a few things with me on our way here. Knock, then wait to be invited in. Only step in far enough for the door to close and make sure you bow and keep your gaze on the carpet until he calls you over to sit. Make sure he sits first, and at any point, if he goes to stand, you make sure you stand as well. If he offers you a drink, accept, even if you don't intend on drinking it. And always answer with "Yes, sir." By the time Alex had explained everything, my head had been spinning. How did he do this every day? Did he ever fuck it up? I looked at the doors for at least another minute before I lifted my hand and knocked. "Come in." I lowered my gaze to the carpet and entered the room, bowing slightly. "Sir, oh, not you too." I could hear a playfulness to Yuka's voice, and I frowned. "That boy, Jolene, it's fine. You can stand straight and look at me. I'm not really a stickler for the old ways." I hesitated before standing straighter and looked over at Yuka Takada. If Alex looked even half as good as this man, at his age, I would be happy. "Come, sit down. Would you like a drink?" You can say no, Joey. I can call you Joey, can't I?" I nodded as I crossed the floor and stopped in front of the chair opposite him. "Yes, sir. You can, and if you have it, some water will be nice. Please, call me Yuka. Everyone else does. Well, except for Alex." Yuka laughed, going to the small bar to the left of his desk, and he poured me a glass of water. He brought it back to me, and I accepted it with a slight bow. The only time Alex calls me Yuka is when he's pissed at me. He went to the other side of the desk and motioned for me to sit. I placed the glass gently on the huge desk and sat down, placing my hands in my lap. Why was I so nervous about this? Maybe because of the Yakuza clan leader sitting opposite me, or what it would mean if I said yes, I would become part of the clan. "So, Alex tells me you are staying in New York?" I nodded, smiling. "Yes, Alex and I have decided that we are going to date." "Good, good." Yuka smiled, sitting back in his chair. "About time. Some of the clan were becoming worried." I blinked. "Worried?" "Yes, they thought maybe Alex might not like women." It took me a moment to realize what he was saying before I snorted. My hand flew to my mouth and heat raced across my cheeks. "Oh, I am so sorry about that." Yuka laughed at me, and my face reddened further. "Alex definitely likes women," I said, trying not to laugh again. "He was going to pitch a fit when he found out that's what everyone thought of him." "Yes, we can see that," Yuka said, his laughter dying down. "Now let's get to the crux of this meeting, the offer." I nodded and leaned forward to pick up the glass. I sipped at the water, then put it back and waited. Yuka raised an eyebrow and my gaze widened. "Oh, sorry, you'd like my answer?" He chuckled and nodded. "Yes, that would be nice." "Oh, of course." I gulped and straightened my back. I would be honored to become the clan doctor in training. Saying it to Yuka was the first time I had uttered it out loud. Alex hadn't wanted to know until I had spoken to Yuka, telling me it was between us, until it was official. "Wonderful. Let's go over what you will receive." Yuka leaned forward and picked up a piece of paper to his left and held it up. "Your training time with Yasu will be a full 5 years. In this time, if you feel you are unable to continue with the training, your contract and salary will be terminated. You will need to sign a non-disclosure agreement in which you agree to not say a single word about what you see or hear or witness while working with the Takata clan. I nodded as he looked up and he returned it, continuing. You must carry the mark of the Takata clan in the form of a small tattoo. If your contract is terminated, the tattoo will be struck through with red ink and you will be barred from entering East Village indefinitely. If you are found in the Takata clan territory when barred, your punishment will be swift and brutal. I gulped as he looked up at me. Are you okay? Yes, sir. Keep going. He nodded and continued. If you need to leave East Village, you will need permission from the head of the Takata clan. That's me. He grinned, and I giggled. If you do not get permission, and you stray into enemy territory, the consequences can be dire. You are to travel with the head of the Takata clan when they travel both interstate and abroad as his personal physician, in which you will administer medical aid and medication where needed. Holy shit. I hope I got a copy of this. You will be accompanied by a driver at all times and will not need to drive yourself anywhere. Like soda? Yes. Yuka put the piece of paper down and looked at me. Is there anyone in the clan you would like to request? I blinked with the question. Jolene, you are very popular with the clan and have a long list of soldiers who would be happy to be your driver. You just have to name someone. My mind drew a blank until I remembered how annoyed Aoto was with Alex last night and how he'd asked if I was okay. Is Aoto available? Yuka smiled and nodded. Alex had a feeling you would ask for him. Aoto is extremely protective of you. He would make a great choice. He picked up the paper again and read. Okay, where was I? Oh yes, driver, done, bodyguard. Again, the paper lowered a little. Someone to be with you pretty much every day. They will go with you everywhere. I giggled. Can I have Alex? Yuka tipped his head back and laughed, his whole body shaking before he lowered his head and looked at me. No. I blinked at how deadpan he was until Yuka started to cackle again. Sorry, Joey. Alex is my head of security, but if you like, I can see if he has anyone spare. No, it's fine. I racked my brain. Reiji? Very good. Yuka picked up a pen and made a note on the page in front of him. Auto driver, Reiji bodyguard. Putting the pen back, he looked at the paper again and continued. Salary. Your base rate, until fully qualified and have passed your doctorate, will be $175 a year and will increase to $225 after you've passed. What? Yuka looked at me. Is that not enough? We can negotiate. No, that's more than enough. Way more than I was expecting. Holy shit, why didn't I become a Yakuza doctor sooner? If you're sure. Sir, Yuka, that is more than adequate. Thank you. I bowed slightly and he smiled. Good. Okay, let me get Pearl to type all this up in a contract, and I will have everything sorted for you to sign by this afternoon. Yuka stood and I quickly followed. He held out his hand and I leaned forward, shaking it, bowing. Why don't you go and get Alex, save him from Pearl, and go for lunch? I will let Alex know when everything is in place, and you can come back and sign everything. Thank you, Yuka. You have no idea how much this opportunity means to me. No, thank you, Joey. The clan seems to have a spring in its step again, and it seems to be all down to your presence. Yuka showed me to the door and opened it for me. I think you're going to be a very important part of our world. 56, Alex. Are you telling me that young woman in there with Yuka is the same one that you've been moping over? I blinked and looked at Pearl, who squinted at me. She's absolutely stunning, Alexander. Are you sure she's the same one who has you all out of kilter? I chuckled and leaned back in my chair. Yes, Pearl. Joey is the one who has had me out of kilter. About bloody time, she huffed, shaking her head. I was starting to think I might have to have my husband offed and marry you, to keep you happy. I stared at her for a moment before we both burst into laughter. Goodness, Pearl, if I had known, I would have not. Pearl swatted at me, and I laughed harder. Stop it. Goodness, you are insufferable. I've been telling him that for the last 3 months. Joey's voice floated to me, and I was about to say something to her when I looked up and saw her standing with Yuka. I quickly jumped to my feet, bowing. Sir, Alexander, sit, will you? I blinked and watched as Yuka walked Joey over to one of the chairs and sat her down before raising an eyebrow at me. I said sit. I sank into the chair, staring at him as if I was in trouble, and Joey giggled. I see what you mean, Yuka. Yuka, it was Sir. Yes, he is a bit of a stickler for the old ways. I might have to beat it out of him. Joey giggled and looked at me, a smirk coming to her beautiful lips, and I knew I was about to get my pride smacked. Leave the beating to me. I have never been embarrassed in front of Yuka or Pearl, but the heat which raced across my face was insane, and my gaze lowered to the tabletop. Oh, bless! Look, he's blushing! Pearl giggled, and I rolled my eyes, lifting my gaze. Are you all enjoying yourself? Yuka chuckled and placed a hand gently on Joey's shoulder. I will speak with you later, Joey. Pearl, will you come with me, please? Pearl nodded and lifted herself from the table and walked out of the room with Yuka, leaving Joey and I alone. She looked at me, smiling sweetly, and all I wanted to do was bend her over the table and fuck her. But I didn't think that would go down so well with Pearl. Are you okay? My gaze shifted back to Joey, and I tilted my head to the side. Of course, why wouldn't I be? You sort of got smacked just then. She giggled. Oh, don't worry, doll. I will get back to you. Her face heated a little, and I smirked at her before leaning back in the chair. So how did things go? Everything sorted? Joey nodded. Yes, I have accepted Yuka's offer. As much as I was glad Joey accepted because that meant we would be together, I was also apprehensive of what it meant. She was now going to be contracted to the clan like Oliver and I were. She would wear the same mark, have the same rules, and be in the same danger as I was, if not more, because Yasu was Yuka's primary doctor, which meant Joey would eventually replace him. That's great. Joey squinted at me. Your reaction makes me think otherwise, Alex. I thought this was something which would be good for us. I grimaced with the fact she had picked up on my reluctance. Joey, sweetheart, it is great, but it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to be extremely careful from now on. She nodded. I know, but you know what? I am up for the challenge. And even if I decide I don't want to be the doctor of the Takata clan anymore, I will still stay. For you. My eyes closed. For me? Was she doing this for me? Did she think this was the only way we could be together? I opened my eyes again and looked at her. As long as this is something you want to do, Joey, don't do it for me. Do it for you. I am, she replied, her gaze lowering. I don't think I could go through life right now without you by my side. Holy shit, this woman was killing me. Her love, her confessions, her body, her everything. I was never going to be the same. Okay, so, has Yuka discussed driver? Bodyguard? Yes, I have picked Aoto as my driver, and he said I can't have you for a bodyguard, so I picked Reiji. I chuckled at the idea she had asked for me to be her bodyguard, and Yuka had shut her down like I knew he would. Good choices. But remember, being Yuka's personal physician, you're going to be traveling with him a lot, and so will I. So, at some point, I'm going to be your bodyguard anyway. Sweet. She smiled, and I chuckled. So, I have to come back later this afternoon to sign the contract, and then Yuka said something about the clan tattoo. So, until then, can we eat? I am famished. I stood, holding out my hand, and she took it, climbing to her feet. Of course, doll, let's go. Leaving the small tea room, we went out into the reception area, and I stopped. Aoto was already waiting, along with Reiji. The pair bowed at me, then to Joey, and Aoto spoke. It is an honor to be your driver, Miss Brewster. I turned my head to Joey as her cheeks flashed red. Thank you, Aoto. That wound is healing nicely. I will take the stitches out next week for you. Aoto bowed and looked at me. Are you heading out, sir? We have been told to go with Miss Brewster. We were heading out for some lunch. We will take you, Reiji interjected. Yuka has asked us to stay close for the first few days until Miss Brewster's tattoo is completed, then she is able to move through East Village a little freer. I nodded and turned back to Joey. Still famished? Of course. She replied, I think I could eat Aoto's body weight in sushi at the moment. Chuckling, I put my arm around her shoulders, ignoring the grinning Pearl behind the reception desk, and we walked to the elevators. I think I know just the spot. 57. Joey. For the last 2 weeks, I had been Yasu's willing student. Aoto would pick me up at 8 every morning and take me to the clinic, where the doctor would have me working. I thought I might be treating knife wounds, gunshots, and the like from territory disputes more often than I was, but in reality I treated mostly the women and kids of the clan soldiers. I didn't care either way because I didn't have to answer to a corporation or to someone above me. Yasu was the sweetest, kindest man I had ever met in the medical industry. He was patient and funny, and I started to look at him as a surrogate father figure. Speaking of my papa, he kept sending me packages, but now to the house Alex and I shared, and most of them had a wedding undertone, including the one Alex was holding in his hands right now while I ate breakfast. "What the hell is this?" I swallowed the mouthful of scrambled egg and looked at the little box in his hands. "It's a miniature cuckoo clock, Alex. Papa is in Germany at the moment." Alex put the clock down gently on the counter and crossed his arms over his chest, staring at it. "I don't know whether I want it popping open and scaring the shit out of me while I get up during the night to piss." I bit my lips between my teeth to stop the peal of laughter I could feel bubbling up. His gaze slipped to me. "What?" "Alex, once you are asleep, you don't get up for anything." He rolled his eyes. "Tell me I'm wrong. You have to be shaken awake to answer your phone." Yeah, he replied, coming over to me and wrapping his arms around me as I tried to finish my breakfast. "I've been sleeping better because of who I am sharing my bed with." Alex peppered kisses along my cheek to my mouth. "Ooh, coffee breath." I pushed at him, and he chuckled, kissing me again. "Has Yasu told you about the trip next week?" I blinked. "Trip? No, of course he hasn't. For fuck's sake." Alex let go of me and stepped away, going to the fridge and pulled out a bottle of water. "We've got a trip to Nevada coming up." "Nevada?" Alex nodded, opening the bottle and drinking from it before replying. "Yuka has a meeting with one of the clan leaders in Henderson, and because you are Yasu's student, you're coming with us, because Yasu goes everywhere with Yuka when he travels out of New York." Holy shit, I'd never been to Nevada. How close is Vegas to Henderson? About 15-16 miles. Why? Why indeed? I had never been one to think of going to Vegas, but now I was going to be so close. Why not go and have a look? I was thinking we could go and look. Alex put the bottle of water down and looked at me, raising an eyebrow. "Do you not remember the rules?" My brain kicked me. How could I forget? I wouldn't be able to just pop over to Las Vegas. I was part of the Takata clan now. I even had the tattoo to prove it, and as I thought about it, the tattoo, sitting in the same spot as Alex's itch. My hand reached up and I rubbed the dark ink on my skin. "Joey, don't scratch it. You'll pull the ink out." Alex came over to me and gently pulled back the collar of my blouse and ran his thumb over the scabbing tattoo. It'd only been a week since I had gotten it, and it was past the painful stage. "You need to put some cream on it, or it'll dry out and look like shit. Hang on a second." He stepped away from me and left the room, while my mind ran in a million different directions and none of them had anything to do with the tattoo. They all seemed to come back to Vegas, and I suddenly remembered why I wanted to go. Shit. "What?" Alex asked, coming back into the room with a tube of lotion. He put some on his hand and rubbed just under my collarbone, moisturizing the tattoo. "I remember why I wanted to go to Vegas." "Jake." Alex's hand stopped and he looked at me. "What?" Heat raced across my face, and I lowered my gaze. Jake and I always said that one day we would go to Vegas and have a look, but the embarrassment turned to anger, then to sadness, and my bottom lip quivered as I fought back tears. I hadn't cried over Jake since the wedding. He didn't deserve my tears. I needed to stop. "Oh, doll." Alex wrapped his arms around me, holding me to his chest. "Things have happened so fast since the wedding. Have you stopped and given yourself a chance to grieve your friendship breakdown?" I shook my head as I clung to him and Alex smoothed his hand over the back of my head. "No, I was so angry then numb. I think it's finally hit." "Right." Alex stepped back from me, cupping my chin with his hand. "You know what's going to happen today?" I blinked and looked at him. "No." "You and I are calling in sick. You've been worked off your feet, and frankly, so have I." He grinned at me. "So, neither of us are going to work. We are going to sit here and talk and eat, and you're going to cry Jake out of your system, and I am going to be the big soft boyfriend and make it all better by giving you all the love however you want it." "Really? What about Yasu? Aoto? Soda?" "You leave them up to me." He grinned again. "Finish your breakfast while I go and call them. And then I'm going to go and run you a bubble bath, and you're going to soak in it until you're all pruny, and then we're going to sit and talk." I squinted at Alex as he stared back at me. "What?" "Okay, Where is Alexander Kazumi, and what have you done with him? Alex chuckled. Don't like the soft side? No. I'd rather the other guy. Alex smirked and leaned in closer, his mouth nipping at the edge of my ear. Fine, I'll tell everyone we're not coming in, White. Then I'm going to spend the day fucking you and pleasing you until you forget about Jake. How about that? I smirked at Alex as he stepped back and raised an eyebrow. That's better. Now, don't you have a phone call to make? 58, Alex. We had to do that more often. Spending the whole day together, doing nothing but fucking and talking and enjoying each other's company. Nothing to do with work crossed either of our minds or lips, and it had been fucking amazing. What hadn't been amazing? Talking about Jake. Fuck, that rabbit hole was deep as hell. We talked about what it was like when they were growing up after I left, and while there were a couple of bright parts to Joey's stories, more often than not, there were the tales of the way he treated her like a possession, a fall guy. In the end, she had sat on the sofa, staring at the floor for a good 10 minutes, before I took her mind off my brother and his shitty personality. Now I was sitting in my office while Joey slept in bed, trying to catch up on some work emails, because even though I told her we weren't to talk about work, it still carried on without us. My phone buzzed at my elbow, and I picked it up, lifting it to my ear. What's up, Ollie? Oh, so now you're taking my calls, huh? I rolled my eyes, knowing there would be a long line of missed calls from him. It was a Tuesday, which meant a meeting first thing in the morning, then one at the Dragon later that night. We usually drank until we couldn't walk straight and regretted it the next morning. But it was a Tuesday night thing. Sorry, man. Just had to spend the day with Joey. She's just realizing what an ass my brother has been his whole life. I had to help her through it. Uh-huh. Ollie sounded a little more pissed than usual for this time of night, and I turned away from my laptop and provided him my fullest attention. What's happened? There was a bit of a pause on the other end of the line, and I almost knew what was coming. Someone broke into the Dragon. I stared at the wall, my mind trying to process the information. What? Again? Yep, fuckers. This time, they managed to knock out Kai. They got into my office, and Jimmy'd opened the safe. Fuck. And the bold fuckers didn't even bother to disable the cameras either. There were 3 of them inside, 2 outside, keeping watch. I stood and walked toward the bedroom door, peering in to make sure Joey was still asleep. She was there, curled up, her hand out as if reaching for me, satin sheet laid over her curvy frame. Closing the door, I walked down the stairs toward the ground floor. Okay, I'm on my way over. Good, I'll be here. We have a couple guys here looking for clues. Ollie paused. But Alex, there's something you need to see. That statement sent a chill through me, and I stopped on the bottom flight of stairs. Excuse me? Just get your ass over here. The line clicked, and I frowned. This was not going to be a good night. I could feel it in my gut. 20 minutes later, I was standing, staring at the jimmied safe, my stomach in knots. What the fuck? Nothing was missing from the safe. Nothing had been moved. But sitting in the middle on the book we used to track Yuka's movements and meetings was a single Kokeshi doll. While most Kokeshi dolls were cute and represented abundance and good fortune, this one didn't. This one was dressed as an oni, a Japanese demon. Yeah, that's what I thought when I saw it. Ollie said, stepping up to my side. Nothing has been touched, nothing taken, just that thing put in there. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and started to snap pictures of it before I dialed a number. Who are you calling? Oliver asked. I grimaced, knowing I was going to get my ass kicked for calling at this time of night. Alexander Kazumi, you better have a damned good reason to be calling me. Pearl, my darling. Hehe, this is going to be good. Ollie chuckled and I flipped him off. Can I send you some pictures? Alexander Kazumi, you have a perfectly beautiful woman at home. I don't want any D. I stopped her before she could finish what she was going to say. Pearl, sweetheart, focus and listen. Someone broke into the Dragon again. I need to send you a couple pictures. Fine. I held my phone away from my ear and sent the photos. Okay, please have a look at them. I will call back in 10 minutes. I hung up the phone and turned to Oliver. Do you have any Ziploc bags? Oliver nodded and left the room, coming back with one, and I took it. Opening it, I turned it inside out, then picked up the Oni doll with it and quickly sealed it inside, as my phone rang. Putting the doll down on Oliver's desk, I looked at the caller and frowned, picking it up again. Pearl? Alexander, where is the other doll? I blinked and looked at the safe. Other doll? Ollie looked at me, holding up his hand, and the people in the room fell silent. I moved my phone, putting it on speaker. Pearl, sweetheart, you're on speakerphone. There should be another doll. That one is an Oni. Yes, but it is a three-eyed Oni. Usually they're pretty harmless, but when sent as a message, which this no doubt is, that they are the first to be seen, telling the receiver they are being watched. What is it sitting on? I frowned. Yuka's travel book. Okay, it probably doesn't mean what we think. Yuka is always being watched, yes, but who is the one who writes that book? The question hung in the air, and I looked at Oliver as he replied. You do, Alex. Alexander, you're the one being watched. Pearl's statement hung heavily, and I looked at Oliver. Alex, the other doll is going to be black. The black Oni is one of the most dangerous. It symbolizes impending death. My stomach dropped to my feet, and I turned, looking around the room, until my gaze fell on Soda. Take me home. We raced out of the club as I yelled at Oliver to check my office and the rest of the club. Soda couldn't drive quickly enough, and I almost yelled at him to go faster. My phone rang, and I answered it. My hopes were that he had found the other one. Oliver? We've checked your office and the rest of the club. It's not here, Alex. I'm on my way to your place. Fuck. Soda, step on it. As he pulled up against the curb, I jumped out and raced up the path toward the door and skidded to a stop. The front door was ajar. I put my arm back, clicking my fingers, and a gun was placed into my hand. I lifted it, pointing it at the door, and gingerly walked forward. If something had happened to Joey... Nudging open the door, I checked around the corner and through each doorway before moving to the stairs, knowing Soda would have my back. Up the first flight, I kept going until I got to my office. The bedroom door was ajar, and the soft lamplight bled out, and my stomach hit the floor. Joey? No answer, and I suddenly had that sinking feeling in my stomach. Jolene? As I neared the door, I could see the foot of the bed. Joey was still lying in it, a sheet thrown over her, and I nudged open the door, lifting the gun. Joey? She stirred, and I almost sank to my knees in relief as she opened her eyes and looked at me. Alex? Her gaze moved to the gun, and she sat bolt upright, clutching the sheet to her chest, covering her almost see-through nightie. What's going on? What happened? I lowered the gun, resting it against my leg. It's okay, doll. Something was on her dresser, facing her. Black. Horns. My stomach dropped to my feet as I stared at the little doll on Joey's dresser. Joey turned her head to look at where I was staring, and she scrambled off the bed and ran over to me. I pulled her into my arms and cradled her head against my chest as she questioned, "What the fuck is that?" I could hear footsteps on the stairs behind me and the waft of Oliver's cologne as he stepped into the bedroom. Oh, fuck. We had found the black Oni. 59. Joey. I was sitting at Oliver's house, wrapped in my bathrobe, watching as Alex paced around the living room, phone to his ear, anger in his voice. I don't give a fuck. Just find out how they managed to get into my fucking house. I honestly didn't want to be the one on the other end of that phone, and I knew, unfortunately, it was probably Ayoto. Even though he had stepped down as second in command of Yuka's security, to be my driver, he would still be the one Alex called to yell at. Joey here. I turned my gaze and looked at Jade. She cradled Hiro in her left arm while offering me tea with her other hand. I took it and smiled at her. I'm so sorry, Jade. For what? She asked, patting Hiro on the bottom as he stirred in her arms. For being a burden this time of night. I held the cup in my hands, and even though I knew it was warm, it did nothing to ease the chill that had set in my bones. I'm sorry. Oh, stop it, she said, lifting Hiro to her shoulder, and she patted his back as he fussed. When I married Oliver, I knew if anything happened with Alex, then I would have to deal with the fallout and expected late nights and disturbances. They are best friends, have been forever. I will never turn him or the woman he loves away from our home. Thank you, I replied, fighting back tears. That was what friends were supposed to be. If you need anything at all, just ask. I'm going to try and get Hiro settled again. Jade wandered off, and I turned my attention back to Alex, who was still pacing, but the phone had gone into his pocket, and Oliver was standing near him, speaking in hushed tones. I put my tea on the coffee table and lifted my legs, tucking them underneath me. What the fuck had just happened? 1 minute, I was falling asleep after Alex and I had spent the whole day together, loving each other. The next, he was coming into the room, gun drawn. And to see that thing, on the dresser. I knew a little about Japanese culture and knew it was an oni. But what scare was the idea that while Alex had been out, someone had broken into the house. They had come into the house, into our room, where Alex and I had only made love hours before, and left an oni on my dresser facing me. Anything else could have happened. They could have assaulted me, taken me, killed me. No wonder Alex was pissed. Our own house wasn't safe anymore. For a good 10 minutes I stared off into space before Oliver brought me out of my thoughts. He was still speaking to Alex, but Oliver's gaze moved to me, then back to Alex, who stopped and turned to me. I could see anger in his gaze, but there was also worry, and he sighed, nodding to Oliver before he came over to me. Alex knelt down in front of me and put his hands on my hips, his thumbs brushing the soft robe. "Hey, doll, you want to get out of here? I'll take you to a hotel for the night." I frowned and looked over to Oliver, who was on the phone, then back to him. "Are you coming with me?" Alex closed his eyes and dropped his head to my knee. "Didn't think so." He lifted his head, looking at me as for the first time in the 4.5 months we'd been together, I saw fear in his gaze. "Joey, baby, please, I need to know you're safe. I can have Reiji and Auto stay with you, and have men in rooms either side of you." I shook my head. "No, I'm not going anywhere while you're still here. You either come with me or I don't go." Alex's jaw clenched and he turned his head away, staring at Oliver, who was now raising his voice at whoever was on the other end of the line. "Just fucking find them." I lifted my hand, catching Alex's jaw, and turned his head back to me. "Alex, I'm safe here. I will stay with Jade." He opened his mouth to speak when a shadow fell over us. We both looked up to see Ollie standing off to the side. "Alex, we have to go." Alex sighed and lifted himself. "She won't go to a hotel. She is right here." I spat, and the pair of them looked down at me, and I flipped them both off. "Alex, she's fine here." The guys turned to Jade, who was holding a block of chocolate, 2 glasses, and a bottle of red wine. "I have enough security here. Just go and do what you have to. Joey will be here when you get back. Maybe a little drunk, but here." I could see Alex wanted to argue, but Oliver put his hand on his shoulder and shook his head. "Nope, don't go there. You'll end up shanked with that bottle." "Too right," Jade said, coming to sit next to me. "Now go on. Pearl is on her way too. She's bringing sake and strawberry mochi." "Wonderful. We don't need security now. A 70-year-old woman will chase them off." Alex said exasperatedly. Seriously, Alexander, go away." Jade said, "Now." Rolling his eyes, Alex leaned down, kissing me, lingering long enough to show me he didn't want to leave me alone, before he lifted himself, turned on his heel, and left with Oliver. I turned to Jade. "Is Pearl really coming over?" "Oh yes, she is." Jade grinned, pouring out a glass of wine and handing it to me, "and bringing mochi and sake and whatever else she can find. We're going to get you nice and drunk to take your mind off things while the boys go off and chase after bad guys." As I lifted the wine to my lips and Jade waffled on about something Hero did that morning, I couldn't help but think it wasn't bad guys Alex and Oliver were chasing. It was demons. 60, Alex. The phone rang inside the car, and Soda pressed a button on the steering wheel, letting the car pick up Bluetooth, answering the call. "Alex, I want you to be very careful about this." Yuka's voice floated to me through the car speakers, and I frowned. "Careful?" Someone had broken into the Dragon, left a warning for me there, then broken into my house and left another, next to my sleeping girlfriend. Anything could have happened to Joey, and I really didn't want to dwell on the thought. "They will pay for this, Yuka." I was beyond angry. I was seething, and I felt Oliver's hand come to my shoulder, trying to bring me down a little. First, they encroach into our territory, then they threaten me? That I can handle. But to break into my house and leave a threat against Joey, that shit I cannot stand for. Yuka sighed on the other end of the line. "I will have Minato and his men meet you at the edge of the Ikeda territory, and I will ring Taro Ikeda and request a meeting between you and him." A meeting? This wasn't going to be solved with a damned meeting. This would be solved with bloodshed, No, I will go in and Alexander Kazumi, you will do no such thing. Sota, stop the car. Yuka's voice boomed through the speakers of the car, and Sota pulled the vehicle over. Now get out and leave me to speak with my pig-headed general. Both Sota and Oliver exited the car, closing the doors, and I stared at the dash of the car. I could only imagine how pissed off Yuka was right now. He barely raised his voice at anyone, and never had with me. Alex, listen to me, please. I know what you are going through. Someone has violated your private space, put your love in danger. I've been there. But chasing down who you think is responsible will only bring more heartbreak. We do not want a clan war in East Village. We have been peaceful for years. I'd like it to stay that way. I could understand what he was saying, but I also couldn't give a fucking care in the world and diplomacy and peace. You will go to the edge of the Akeda territory and wait. Do you understand me? I didn't answer, and Yuka raised his voice just a little, and I closed my eyes. Alexander, do you understand me? Sighing, I nodded, bowing my head a little, and replied, Yes, sir. Good. Now is Joey safe? Yes, sir. She is with your daughter and Pearl. Reiji and his team are there too. Well, you should have taken Reiji with you. Pearl can handle herself, and you haven't seen what Jade is capable of. Yuka chuckled, and I followed him. Okay, get to the edge of their territory and wait. Do not, and I repeat, do not set a foot over that line until I have called you. Yes, sir. The line clicked, and I tipped my head back. Fuck. Inhaling deeply, I climbed out of the car and looked at both my driver and my best friend. They were at the back of the car, talking quietly, and Oliver turned. Everything okay? Define okay. I spat, leaning against the car, and Oliver came over to me, while Sota stayed at the back of the car. I just got chewed by my boss, your father-in-law, so no, things aren't really okay. Alex, you know Yuka cares for you like a son. He doesn't want you to get hurt. And what about Joey? I asked, turning my gaze to him. Someone was in my house, Oliver. In my house, standing over my girlfriend for God knows how long, then left that Oni. They threatened her life, and Yuka just wants me to wait? Look, I know. I swear to God, if one more person tells me they know what I am going through, I am going to lose my shit. No one knows how fucking wild I am right now. Oliver frowned, lowering his gaze, and even though I knew I shouldn't be taking it out on him, I was. Someone was in my house. The phone in the car rang, and I sighed, pushing my hand through my hair as Sota walked back to the driver's seat and climbed in, answering it. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I knew when Sota lifted himself back out, it was going to fester my mood even more. We have to go. Taro Ikeda will grant you an audience, but only if we are there by midnight. I looked down at my watch. It was 20 minutes to, and I nodded. It would take at least 10 minutes to get there, if not more. We had to get going. Climbing back into the car, I sat and brooded in the front seat as Sota took us to the edge of Ikeda territory. We arrived with 5 to spare at the designated destination, a small, run-down little business right on the edge of Ikeda territory. Something in my gut told me to stay in the car, but my anger won over, and I climbed from the car, looking over my door at the building. There were lights on, and the smell of cooking, but no sign of movement, and I frowned, looking back at Oliver. He had a pistol in his hand, resting it against his thigh. He obviously felt the tension too. Lights. My eyes squinted at the bright headlights, and my stomach dropped to my feet as another car came to the side of us, the window coming down. Alexander. I blinked. Yuka? He looked at our car and then to his driver. You swap with Sota. Take my son-in-law home to his wife and child. With the swap done, and Sota now sitting in the driver's seat, I turned and watched the car, carrying my best friend, leave, and I turned back to my boss. Yuka. Alexander, get in the car. Yet if you're going to speak with Taro, you are going to have me with you. Then at least you might leave with your life. I frowned and opened the passenger door, climbing in next to Yuka, and we slowly drove away from the little store and deeper into Ikeda territory and possibly to our deaths. 61.